When I finally made the decision to go natural, I asked myself this question when I saw Lauryn Hill. She's talented, she's beautiful, she's smart, and she's natural. Is that possible for me? And it was just that one question that sparked everything. Me questioning myself meant that there was something deeper there. I didn't accept my hair as being beautiful the way that it was. When I finally made the decision to go natural, it was the best thing ever because it put me on a path to opening up my eyes to a lot of things about how Black women are viewed in this country and what we go through as people. As a media professional, someone who understands the power of media, I knew that creating content that showed us in our natural beauty would be powerful. I want women to embrace themselves and to love themselves just the way that they are. I want women to love themselves unconditionally, especially Black women. If you think about it, no one has hair like us. Once you accept yourself for who you are, there's nothing that can hold you back. And I feel that natural hair is a gateway to open up the conversation about so many other things. I felt like this is my duty to inform, to lend my voice, build a platform for us to talk about these issues, because I know that we care. I know that we care about each other. That's why natural hair is so important to me. It's more than just hair. Natural hair is a lifestyle. It's who we are. We shouldn't run from who we are. We should run towards it and embrace it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the premiere episode of Maine Moves Live. I am your host, Natasha Gaspard. I'm also the creator of Maine Moves Media. As you just saw the intro, I guess I don't have to introduce myself. You saw everything. And so we are here today for the premiere episode on Juneteenth, June 19th. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. I brought together the most powerful minds, the most brilliant minds that I know to talk about this concept of freedom and what that really means. And are we free? And how can we ensure that, right? And so I want to start by introducing our panel. Let me start with who I see first, Miss Diane C. Bailey of Emerge Natural Hair Beauty Industry Alliance. She is a dear sister friend of mine. We have had these conversations since the first time we've met. And so I'm so glad to have you on here. I'm gonna go down and Dr. J James, thank you so much for being here. We connected at the airport on our way back from Ghana for the year of return, and we have been inseparable ever since. Thank you so much for being here. You are a assistant clinical professor at NYU. I want to talk to you about this idea of trauma and healing and how important it is in this moment. And then we have Lurie Daniel Favors, Esquire of the Center for Law and Social Justice at Medgar College. Thank you so much for being here. We have been on panels together. We talk all the time about all types of issues having to do with natural hair, but we know that it is deeper than just hair, right? And so I wanted to have you on to talk about your work and this concept of freedom. We also have a guest who will be coming on a little bit later, Dr. Nadia Lopez, and I will bring her into the conversation when she gets here. So everyone can unmute their microphones. And I want to talk a little bit about this concept of freedom on this Juneteenth. And I want to ask each and every one of you, what is the why behind what you do? What is the thing that core thing that brings you to your work? If you want to start, Lurie, I see you shaking your head.
I'm always shaking my head, Natasha. So for me, the why is that I love Black people. Ever since I was a child, my uncles, my aunties, my mother, and father always did what they could to really instill with me, not just a sense of love, but a sense of responsibility for my community, recognizing the history from which we come, and the shoulders upon which we stand. And that has always been something that took into account hair, yes, of course, but it also took into account, the benefits that I have as a Black woman of lighter complexion, right, within a society that privileges that type of skin presence. It also includes, the fact that, when I was little, I was one of those kids getting the Public Enemy tapes, get Africa Bombada, like I had to read the books, and had to really do the work, and was, exposed to films like Sankofa from Haile Gerima when I was 12 years old, with the expectation that I would take that information and apply it to the needs of my community. And so all the work that I do as a racial justice attorney, as someone who has spent the past 22 plus years, God, I feel old. Someone who spent like the past couple of decades in this work, both as an activist, as a student, as an organizer, as an educator, and as an attorney, seeing the benefits that were poured into me and thinking about how to systematize that for the benefit of our people, that's just sort of been how I was groomed. It's how I attracted my partner, my husband. We do this work together. We're trying to raise our children to do this work. But it all really does begin with just my parents and my family planting within me a deep-seated love for my people and an understanding of what we have gone through, knowing my history was not an option. It was an obligation. And so all of those things together really just sort of fuse into what I consider my life's purpose, which is to create pathways towards freedom, which we will, I suppose, define going forward for communities of African descent with the Pan-African lens towards liberation for Black people.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Like, okay. So that was amazing. And the point that I want to pull out of there is the fact that you were groomed, right? And so
absolutely, it was intentional.
It was intentional, and I think that's so important because you talk about knowing your history, knowing who you are, right? And I think back, I was raised in Brooklyn too, but by way of Haiti, my family's from Haiti, West Indies, and we have a history in Haiti as well, right? Sheroes of the Haitian Revolution. Now, I have this book here, but I wasn't taught this. I wasn't taught that women were fighting in the Haitian Revolution. You know what I mean? And so I guess I came to my understanding of my roots later in life, but we'll get to that. But thank you for that. Diane, how about you? What brings you to this work that you do?
I wrote an article. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wrote an article about 4 years ago. I had an epiphany. I thought I chose natural hair, but natural hair chose me. This advocacy to help people transition and to find their fullest self, that was not something that I anticipated. I was a cosmetologist, but something happened when I learned to braid. Something happened when I learned to, when I started dealing with texture and curls and popping waves. And so something triggered me, and I fell in love with it. And by falling in love with hair, I started to really fall in love with my sisters and understanding that we had the same journey, the same path, the same challenges. And I was able to help those sisters with their challenges, their children with their challenges around self-care, self-love, identifying the needs of their hair, and just giving them a calmness. And that really helped me to kind of engage myself. So the more I did, the more I learned. And the more I learned, the better advocate I became for natural hair. So I started off as a cosmetologist, and I have become an advocate and an influencer and a driver for an entire industry that I love so much.
Yes, and I've been one of those people that met you in this industry. And what I think sets you apart, Diane, is the fact that the way that you came into this industry, the way that you made a decision, because you didn't talk about that. You made a decision.
I made a decision. Yes, I did.
Decision to love natural hair when nobody else wanted to, and nobody understood why you would even change your career from, from chemical services, which was booming, right?
Yes.
To natural hair.
This is the 80s. This is the 80s.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the 60s. So I knew Afros from the 60s. I appreciated Afros from the 60s. So I had been natural off and on most of my life. And then when I finally opened my salon and decided that I was no longer going to do chemicals, people told me,
sorry guys.
People told me, nobody's going to pay you for nappy hair. That's what my mother told me. Nobody's going to pay you for nappy hair. And guess what? I said, I don't care. I don't care, because I'm not going to spend the next 30 years of my life smelling these chemicals. I just cannot do it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to smell herbs. I wanted to smell botanicals. I wanted to smell the earth. I wanted to smell flowers and freshness when I work. I did not want to smell the caustic aromas of chemicals that I was using. And so I did my research and I studied my herbs and I just did my homework. I did my homework and I fell in love with botanicals and herbs and found out that those are the things that replenish and give back. And so that was my path. And I have no regrets. I have no regrets. I love this industry. I love all my sisters out there making it happen in their own way. I love the fact that we have come to a place with social media that we can engage like we're doing right now. It's just, it's emotional. It's emotional for me because I never anticipated something so internationally received, never.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into the international portion later on. Jay, Dr. Jay, tell us about what brought you to this work that you do, and tell us a little bit about the work that you do.
Peace, Tasha. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. This feels like a moment. We left Africa and we were like, wow, 2020 is going to be special. It's going to be a moment. And I don't think any of us anticipated this. Let's be real. So let's just pause for a second, right? Thank you, Lurie. Thank you, Diana. I'm so blessed to be in space with you all. I feel the thing that really resonated with me listening to you both speak is just knowing that you found your passion. And like when you find your passion, there's nothing like it, right?
Yes.
And to what you said, Lurie, I can look back now in my life and realize that everything was preparing me to do what I do now. I was born in Jamaica during a period of like real political unrest. And yeah, shout to Jamaica, right? Like, when Supercats say, were you there when Kingston red hot? I was in Kingston. In Kingston, and it was really gangster. And I remember my mom hiding me in closets. I remember, just the violence that was really inspired by American foreign policy and how that impacted us, the poverty, not being able, the stores were empty. And it was really because we were moving towards democratic socialism. Like we were kind of recognizing exactly what this country hopefully is doing, recognizing that the economic system doesn't work and saying, let's try something else. And America was like, nope, not having it. And as a result, flooded the island with drugs, flooded the island with guns. So really, from a young age, being tear gassed, from a young age, really understanding like systemic violence, maybe not having the words for it, but really feeling it in every way. Being able to migrate to America and thinking that was a blessing and really finding out what that was. And, the idea of never being white, but you're not really like American Black either. So it's like you're in this just like, this void, right? And at 18 to experience the justice system, to be arrested at 18, to be, without any criminal record, without any contact with the justice system, for a judge to tell me that he was doing me a favor by only sentencing me to 7 years to life. Spending time on Rikers during, when it really was Rikers and experiencing that and really feeling injustice in like my core, right? It's not It's not a theoretical discussion for me. I know what it feels like. And I know what our people have felt like, and feeling like I've had really great teachers, you know, from Baldwin's, from Angela Davis's, from the Bob Marleys, where I know that this isn't just about me, this is about all of us, and really feeling that in a real way, and really continuing to just put in the work to make sure that I honor the ancestors that have created this moment. So for me, there can be nothing else but this work.
I feel that.
Mm.
You know, it's so interesting when you say growing up in Jamaica, and I was talking about Haiti, and, you know, coming back from Ghana and seeing all the things in Ghana and just experiencing the amount of love that we experienced there. It was amazing. And, you know, I sometimes say that when I was there, I felt like an orphan a little bit, right? When I got to Ghana, I cried so much. Diane, you was there, you saw me, I was crying every minute. It was tears of joy, but it was also a feeling of just being loved and accepted just for being you. And I remember someone told me, a few people said, you know, that they were waiting for us. They've been waiting for us, and what took us so long? And I remember my response was, you want us?
Yes.
You want us here? You know, and I caught myself, and I'm like, wait, I sound like I don't have a home. Like, and that was the trauma, right? That's the pain of not feeling wanted, not feeling like I've been wanted, like a whole country, like my people want me. And then on top of that, it broke down some of those stereotypes that I had, those, I'll just call it lies, straight out lies that I was told, that people in Africa, the Africans, don't see us as African. And I'm like, I never understood that. I guess I just, you know, took it as that's the way it is. But it really opened my eyes to seeing that we are all the same. We're just in different parts of the world, and that we have not connected. So we have these ideas about each other, but I've never had a conversation about, well, why Africans don't think American. You know what I mean? I just heard it and I just ran with it. But when I was there and I experienced it, I said, this is. I need to come back to America and just tell every Black person to go to Africa, like right now. Like that was the thing. Everyone I spoke to, I stopped people on the street and was like, have you been to Africa? Have you been to Africa? And every excuse they gave me, I was like, well, it's not really that expensive. Okay, well, you could do this and you could do that. Because I really feel that connection is really what's missing. And that brings me to the question of, well, Lurie, I watched your white supremacy video a few times on Twitter. You have a amazing video that is pinned on your Twitter. And I said, let me watch this a few times. I want to talk about the forces that we're dealing with here, right? Because we can sometimes think that things are just the way that they are, right? And like Jay said, when he was younger, you know, he didn't understand what it was. Like he felt it, but he didn't have words to explain. And I can definitely can attest to that too. Like you just feel like something is wrong. You just don't know what it is because nobody else is really talking about it like that, but you know that they feel it. You know what I mean? So what are these forces that we're dealing with that has made this concept of freedom elusive for us, right? And we know it's deeper than Trump, it's deeper than police brutality. So what are we blinded by? What do we need to see?
Yeah, and you know, I think the question of what are we blinded by, that really is at the heart of it. Because if you ask a fish what it means to be wet, they might have difficulty explaining it to you, right? Because it's literally the ether in which they live. And so they might not know what it is to explain what it is to be wet until they were flopping around on the beach outside of their element, right? And so when we're talking about freedom, and as it pertains to people of African descent, we're really talking about the ability to separate ourselves from a system that was created by a couple of men, frankly, white men who sat in some rooms, let's call them boardrooms of the, you know, the 400 or 500 year ago variety, who made some very key decisions. We know that prior to the introduction of the enslavement of African people in the 1500s, and we often say 1619 is the year that we commemorate the introduction of the enslavement of African people here in the United States. This is true. But for our Afro-Latinx brothers and sisters, our people have been dragged to Spanish and Portuguese speaking countries or colonies for over 100 years before we actually ended up on people, the 20 and odd, who ended up in these shores in Virginia were actually on a Portuguese ship headed towards other places. They also would have been a part of that Spanish or Portuguese speaking populace, but for the fact that that ship had been taken over and they ended up here in Virginia. So sorry, I just saw one of my favorite people. So when we're talking about the thing that we're trying to be free from, we're really talking about a system where, and yes, slavery has always existed, but America and Western powers made some very key decisions about the fact that the type of enslavement they were going to create, because this type of slavery did not exist, was going to be a lifetime position. Your children were going to be born into subjugated spaces. You would never be able to marry your way out, to buy your way out. You could pass your way out if you had sufficient light skin privilege, and you were able to, genetically bury the blackness within you. But it was really just a system that white people created to justify the fact that they had just stolen this land from the indigenous. They had committed genocide against countless numbers of indigenous people in a land that was fully occupied when they arrived. And they made decisions to base their entire national economy based on the idea that, well, the people we are enslaving are not really human. They based their national economy on that. And when they made the decision to do that, they involved every single section of the social society. So the religious institutions supported this idea and came up with religious doctrines to underline it. This is going to help white people sleep better at night, because if I'm going to rape you Monday through Saturday and before church on Sunday, I need to make sure that I can sleep as well as possible. If I'm going to lynch you after church on Sunday and hang your body, I need to feel like at least God has had some sort of saying, this is okay, well done, my good and faithful white supremacist servant. They got the legal system to buy in and support it. And so the laws were crafted such that back in as early as in the 1600s, if you were a Black person who was being corrected by a white person and you should happen to die as a result of resisting said correction, well, that wasn't going to be considered a felony because you weren't really human and you should not have resisted. And from that, we get the modern day, he resisted, I feared for my life, I shot to kill. And that's going to get me, an officer, off, right? We know that policing started as slave patrols to protect property, which was two things. One, to keep Native people from getting their property back, and two, to prevent Black people who were property from running away. And that is the genesis of policing in this society. We know that the medical institutions supported it. There were diseases literally named to describe the desire that Black people had to run away. Drapetomania was considered a disease. It was the unquellable quench for freedom to run away from what white people determined was your natural state. And so these are a huge, it's like a puzzle of interlocking systems that come together to create this fist. And all of us are just sort of living within the remnants of those systems, because after slavery ended, today we're celebrating Juneteenth, which is, happened over 900 days after the Emancipation Proclamation. And we often think about the Emancipation Proclamation as, the freedom of Black people. The Emancipation Proclamation freed no one. It was a proclamation that Abraham Lincoln made that said that all the people who are held in slavery in the states that are no longer a part of this country are now free. So it's like me and my husband divorced, and I'm trying to tell him what he's going to do with the property that he got in the divorce settlement. It doesn't work that way. And so we also have the education system that supported this. Niggerology was an area of scientific study. Carter G. Woodson tells us in 1933 that if we don't get our children out of these education systems that were not designed for us, then we are going to perpetually create slave mentality type people. And we have to remind ourselves that our Jewish brothers and sisters would never ask the Nazis or people who had Nazi sympathies to educate their children. And yet our children are enrolled in these schools on a daily basis. And so it's really white supremacy. The thing that we are trying to resist is really a series of interlocking systems that came together like a Lego build-a-block set that really were just designed to support those early white males' decisions to create an economy based on never having to work, but stealing the work and the labor from Black people and forcing them to be the basis of your superpower. So it's like they stuck us in hamster wheels and we get off the hamster wheel on pain of death. And so that's the thing. And it's a 400, 500-year-old system. And the challenge is that it's not just an external system. We have internalized a lot of these beliefs, because our ability to resist culturally, our ability to resist by educating our children, teaching them, keeping a religious system that reminded us that we are an image of the divine, having access to science that we created, an African-centered spiritual and physical technology, those things we could not retain. So our ability to resist was really quelled and minimized in so many significant ways. And most of our kids today don't even want to be considered African, let alone travel to Africa. And that just shows you how well those interlocking systems have been able to produce and replicate people in the image of whiteness, though we wear black skin.
Lurie, I just
Fire.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I
We
wish
can
I
go
could take
home now.
notes.
We can all go home. Peace, Taj.
I
It was
know,
nice
we're
being here.
good.
It was nice being here. Thank you.
You taking notes, Nadia? Okay, well, let me bring Nadia into the...
No, don't bring me into the conversation.
Let's just go home. What else needs to be said? There's nothing else needs to be said. It's done. It's over.
That's awesome. That was awesome.
I'm sweating right now. Let me tell you. I met Lurie at an event. I don't even remember what year this was. She spoke. I said, I have to meet this woman. Who is this woman? It was an event that had to do with, I think it was relationships, men and women relationships. It was funny. And ever since then, I was like, I'm following you. Everywhere you go, I'm you know.
And you have.
I have.
Yeah.
And we created a workshop and so many different things. But I just love how you take all of the history, everything, and you just put it into one. You just make it seem so
clear.
You make it plain.
Yes, clear.
And it's so clear. It's so clear. But then I sit and I wonder why nobody else ain't getting it. Like you laid it out on the like everything. I have no questions. I don't have any questions. I have none. I'm done, right?
I thank you guys. I appreciate you. And now I'm ready to learn from all the other genius that is here.
Let me introduce the other genius.
It really is. I mean, we're intentionally kept from these conversations. We weren't supposed to be having these conversations. Like we were not supposed to be in a space where we could have these sort of dialogues. So I give thanks to all the ancestors and to all the rest of you, because it really is a collective communal effort. It really is.
Absolutely. And that's why I my first show, I had to have you all on here. So Dr. Nadia Lopez, thank you so much for joining us from Mott Books Academy. I'm so glad to have you. I'm so glad to have you here. So I start off the conversation by asking the why behind the work that you do. Can you tell us the why? What brought you to this work?
I became an educator after being inspired by my own daughter. I had my daughter and I realized that someone is going to have to teach her. And when I thought about those who had influence in my life, it was my parents and it was the educators that they were intentional about sitting me in front of by finding the right schools. I physically live in District 17, but the schools I attended was District 13 because my mother was very clear that she was putting her only child into the school system. And I was transitioning from Al Kareem, and I don't know if many of you know Al Kareem, it was part of the Kush campus. Karim Kamara, who was a state assemblyman, his mom, Sister Aura, had created this very Afrocentric school. It's like Little Sun, people, if you're familiar with Little Sun, but if you're on steroids like we were. And my parents aren't from this country, they're from Central America. So they wanted to make sure that my foundation started with me understanding what it meant to be Black in America. And so from there, my mom had to find a public school for me because my father was like, she can't keep going to private school. You can't shelter her from what's really the reality of this world. And so District 13 had the strongest administrators, and that's where my mother was going to put me. So she had to do like, you know, most parents, the okie doke, get a rent receipt, a lease in a building across the street. Mr. Brownwell gave that to her. My mother was able to submit it, and that's how I went into the school. And so as I thought about that, one, I found that there were a lot of people complaining about the quality of education, the high turnover rate that was happening, the large influx of, you know, we've always had white teachers in our schools. I always had white teachers when I was in elementary schools, but they were so disconnected to the community. And then I also just thought about those people who were just mavericks in my life, right? So I had Paula Holmes, I had Viola Abbott, I had Dr. Hall. I had all these people who just was like, Black children are just dynamic and they're going to show out because we're going to teach them to show out. And I said, okay, I'm going to go into education. But then when I got into education, I realized like there is a systemic oppression that happens, but there's also internalized oppression that shows up in classrooms with people of color. And I was having a problem understanding why people of color who look like me were the ones who were telling children that they couldn't amount to anything. And I'm having an issue with understanding how we were allowing ourselves to demoralize the very children who had been abandoned, who had been the result of the crack era, who like were being raised by their grandmothers, who like all of these things, right? And so I started to challenge the space, even in a space where there were people that I loved and revered who were my heroes, right? And there was something that happened between the time that I was coming up and this new era of what education would look like for me, which was totally different because I went to school for talented kids, and then all of a sudden I'm in like sands where it's just like, what the hell is going on here? And so because I kept challenging, the question then became like, what are you going to do differently? And it was hard to do things differently because everybody thought that I was crazy for thinking that things needed to be different. So I then went into opening up an all-girls school, and which was amazing, right? Because the idea was it was supposed to be an all-girls school for Black and brown babies who were supposed to be just know that they were dope and phenomenal in the STEM field. And I was like, that's me. Yeah. But it was created by 2 white women. And while they had a great idea, there was some microaggressions that was showing up in conversations, right? Like, so we had to do something. They wanted to do something for Black History Month. Okay, cool. We always celebrating Black history, but okay, cool. We want to do something special for Black History Month. And they said to me, Nadia, you need to put it together since you're Black. And I was like, well, damn. My parents are not from here. You would probably be closer to doing Black history since your forefathers was here before me. So y'all should be providing reparations through education. So let's do that. But I decided that I was going to do it. And I ended up doing this forum at Long Island University where I had 14 phenomenal Black women in different areas of industries that they were leaders in. So whether it was politics, whether it was health and beauty, whether it was in the social justice field, entertainment, whatever it was, they were going to sit there and they were going to love into these young girls and show them that they were just phenomenal as well and that they can see themselves doing this very thing. And then what ended up happening is that I found that I don't want to say I was like mammy, but I was mammy, right? Like they would leave early at 2:45. I was still in the building. I was getting locked in the building. When one of my best friend's father passed away in Georgia and I needed to go to Georgia and there was an event at the school, they basically tried to guilt me into why I couldn't leave to go to the funeral in Georgia. And then intentionally only came for 15 minutes and we had all of these parents at this event. So I could not leave because then the parents would be like, wait, what's going on? So in that very moment, I decided that the only way to change anything was through leadership and that we had to shift, even with the systemic oppression that happens in public schools. Though, you know, those of you, Diane has been to my school, as well as Natasha has been to the school, and Lurie, your husband, has been to the school to talk to our boys. But you know, like I deal with the oppression, I deal with this right here, but I protect the children, right? So my eye and the prize is on the children all day, every day, because I understand that the fear is that when we educate our children, they will become liberated. When we teach them that they have power within themselves, when we teach them of their lineage, when we tell them that they are descendants of kings and queens, I intentionally have them wearing black and purple because I want them to know that they are royalty. I want to call them scholars because at 3 o'clock when you leave here, that doesn't mean you stop learning. I want to take them to the places that people told them that they could never go because they deserve to be there and they need to turn up and show out and do all great things. So I am a threat, and I get I'm a threat. But I'm not going to sit here and allow God, who has called me to do all things for our children, to be oppressed by those who don't care about our children, even if they look like us or they don't, right? So I'm going to call out the thing, I'm going to show up for the thing, and I'm going to challenge the thing. So that's what drives me, because at the end of the day, I do have a child of my own, but I know that there were people who came before me, who died for me, who fought in Brownsville so that I could be an administrator. And when our children don't even know their own history, I tell the kids of Brownsville, y'all come from a place of activism. You don't even know, right? That if you really understood, you would be protesting up in this classroom, but you know better because I'm teaching you to be the protesters, right? And so we have an obligation. We have an obligation. So what keeps pushing me to do this work is because I want to be an example to those who are watching this, right? You don't have to be an educator to do what I do. You have to be someone who cares about your community, right? Diane, when she came to the school and she was teaching the girls about hair, and she was teaching them about self-esteem, and Natasha comes and talks to the girls about opportunities and all of these things, and showing them Black queens and Black women who have done dynamic things. They're not educators every single day, but they impart knowledge as we need to, and that's the village mentality. So, you know, that's what drives me, and that's what makes me show up all the time.
Amazing. That's amazing. I just love all the work that you do.
Mhm.
That was just a snippet of what she does, guys. If you don't know about Dr. Nadia Lopez, Google her. Okay, Google her. She's amazing, amazing. I just love your fight that you have. Like, you go hard. You go hard. You go hardest, especially for Brownsville. You carrying Brownsville on your back. Like, I respect that. I respect that so much. So what I'm hearing is I'm seeing a thread, right? I'm here to connect the dots, right? And I feel like what is needed that isn't happening, or what needs to happen more, is this connection to who we are, right? And that starts with knowing who we are. And I remember, Lurie, in your video, you were talking about we couldn't, it was against the system for us to know who we are, to know that we were queens, to know that this isn't right. Like, they couldn't have us reading, like we could lose our eyes for that. Like, the knowledge of self seems like it's the thing that is going to get us going. And so with this idea of freedom now, my question is, are we free because we don't think we're free? Or are we not free? I'm gonna just pose that to you. I don't know who wants to take that.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking anyone. Anyone. Because what I'm seeing here is, like, let me just give you an example. So you talked about how I read your book, Afro State of Mind. I read that book. I loved it. I told everybody about it. And one of the things that struck me was, even though, right, and well, you had the benefit of, like, aunts and uncles sending you things, sending you books and images of, like, Black kings and queens. I never got that. You know what I mean? But you had that. You had people pouring into you and telling who you are, and sadly enough, it wasn't enough. You know what I mean? It wasn't enough, but you had that. Imagine someone, I didn't have any of that. And Diane, you know, the people that we talk to at these events, you know, there is a trauma. I know what it is. It's a trauma. We don't call it trauma, but I kind of want to talk about the ways in which trauma shows up that we don't even realize is trauma. You know what I mean? So, so I'll just give an example of from you know, being in the natural hair space, right? And talking to women. When women come up to me and they said, now 20 years, I've been natural for 20 years. This is my 20-year anniversary. I didn't even realize. But
Congratulations.
when I went natural, and still to this day, I hear people saying that they cannot go natural. Like, if my hair doesn't look a certain way, I can't wear it. I don't know how I'm going to be received at my job. We have a whole hair discrimination conversation that's happening. These are the ways that I see that trauma is showing itself, right? Where we feel like we can't even show up as our full selves, as our true selves, right? As the hair that grows out of our head is not good enough to be seen, not by just the society, but ourselves. We don't even want to see it. You know what I mean? Like, those are the real ways that I feel like that is trauma. So tell me some of the ways, Lurie, that show us some of the ways that we are enacting the trauma that we are feeling that we haven't dealt with yet. How does that show up?
I would actually defer to Dr. Joy DeGruy, who is the author of just a phenomenal work called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And I defer to her because she has really put pen to paper as to the multi-generational impact of being enslaved, and then being told you are free, and then still being forced to occupy a slave status within a society that is governed by a racial hierarchy. And she talks about a number of things, and I'll give one example. When we were on plantations and you have a daughter, it was up to you as the parent of this enslaved Black girl to teach her what it was going to be gang raped. to teach her how to hold your body just so that the experience would be as minimally physically harmful as possible. She talks about the fact that Black parents had to call their children, refer to them as nothing. He's a dummy. He's ignorant. He can't do nothing. But they did that because if the master heard them saying how smart and brilliant and amazing and dynamic you were, well, then that elevates your value. And if your value is elevated, you are the first person I'm thinking about selling when I need to bring in more income into my household. And she talks about the fact that while that on the plantation was an adaptive behavior, it was a survival skill, at no point in time do we ever come out from under that system. So even though, yes, we're technically free, we go through Reconstruction. Reconstruction was like a 15-minute period at best, where Black people were able to do phenomenal things, essentially eradicate illiteracy, create banking institutions, and buy land and build up communities that were essentially, after that 15-year period, after the end of the Civil War, were ravaged and essentially destroyed by Jim Crow. And so even in the Jim Crow era, I can't praise my child in front of white people. I can't, because now he's gonna be uppity. And if he's uppity, that puts him or her at harm. And so today, if you're in a bank and you see a white mom whose child is just running all over the place, and Timmy's just everywhere, and Susie and Becky just all over the place, and the mom is just completely oblivious, oh, I think my child is amazing. Or if the mom, white mom and a Black mom are sitting down talking, the mom is just praising her child and talking about how wonderful he is. The Black mother, you better be right by my side. Don't you leave next to me. You stand right next to me in this bank. Don't you go off running around with little Timmy. Timmy has the ability to be free. You are a Black child. You better stand right next to me, because if I don't keep you next to me, if I don't speak harshly to you, if I don't control your natural humane desire to emote and to be expressive, you might emote and express yourself in front of the wrong white person. And if you do that, you might be in danger. Like we keep our son away from a whole lot of activities that his white friends get to do. Like when he was in 3rd grade, he didn't understand how come when he went to his white friend's house, they could play with toy guns in the backyard. But on our block, you can't play with no toy gun on our block, because we got police roaming the block looking for Black people. And if your name is Tamir Rice, then you might have your life ended playing with a toy gun. And so it shows up, the trauma really is, I was born and raised in Germany for the most part of my childhood. And America to me always seemed like what Germany would have been if Hitler had been allowed to remain in power and just agreed, all right, we're gonna close the camps. All right, we won't be as Nazi-like as if we are. And if Jewish people had to live underneath that system, that to me is what America is. It's what, and it's interesting that the Nazis got their inspiration from white people in America. So the trauma shows up in how we raise our children. It shows up in the continuing experiences with institutionalized racism. We can't get a mortgage for decades. Then because we're redlined, then we get mortgages, but the mortgages we get are toxic racist loan products that are designed to overvalue our homes, cause us to pay more money. And then when the Great Recession happens, after 40, 30 years of developing Black wealth, over half of Black wealth is taken from us in the form of the foreclosure crisis, right? And we know that those were racist toxic loans because the banks that gave them to us had to then make settlements because they had to admit that, yes, these are racist toxic loans. So we have systematic distribution of trauma. We have psychosocial distribution of trauma. We have only seeing light-skinned Black people on TV as having any value as a part of trauma. We have the reality that your life could be taken from you in a minute, and that a white man can literally kneel on your neck and snuff the air out of your very lungs for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, as if he is not expecting to suffer any harm from that. So we have the visual reminders, we have the systemic reminders, we have the inability, the maladaptive behaviors that are survival skills, but they do not allow us to be free. When you said, what is freedom? To me, I think of Kuji Chakalia, the second principle of Kwanzaa, the ability to find yourself, name yourself, create for yourself, speak for yourself, the ability to make plans together as a people, effectuate those plans and either succeed or fail, but learn from the plans and try again without being undermined by COINTELPRO, without having your movements undermined by white infiltrators who are there to essentially take out your knees from underneath you. And so I say we are not free. We are still occupying the slave status within the society. And we can look to our economics as a final example, because today we own less than half of 1% of the wealth of this country, which is exactly the amount that we owned in 1865.
Wow. How do we even begin to have this conversation about healing, Lurie? Because it's I see what you're saying, right? We have to know who we are. We have to understand exactly how we've been damaged and like broken by this system, because it was created this way. I guess some people think like, oh, it just happened this way, or that's just the way it is. But no, it was designed this way on purpose. Like it's working in the way it's supposed to, right? And so we have that to contend with, right? But then we also have the internalized, trauma that we act out on each other, right? And we keep ourselves from happiness in a lot of ways, or from finding joy or finding any type of healing, right? So I guess with this conversation, I really want to I want to really pinpoint. I'm glad you gave us that answer. Thank you. Because sometimes when I talk to people, they explain slavery as something that happened in the past. Like, oh, that was in the past. Like we're past that. But I don't think people make the connection about how deeply wounded we all are. And like I said, it's a global thing. It's not just here in America, obviously. So how do we begin? Jay, do you have any thoughts on that as far as like beginning, because your work is like rooted in healing trauma, right? So talk a little bit about what your idea is. Sorry.
Well, I mean, Lurie already said everything we need to know for the night,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel how I can add to this conversation. So maybe two quotes that come immediately to mind. And the first one is by Audre Lorde, who says that the political is a personal and a personal is a political. So to think about everything that Lurie said, and then think about like how that's impacted the personal. I feel like we haven't, as a community, as people, think about what that impact is. Think about having to prepare your daughter to be raped, that was really powerful and really something that, we should all sit with, because that has been the history of repression. We're constantly having to prepare our children to be raped, to be murdered, to be killed. And think about how that destroys the personal. And so I think the second quote that I think of is James Baldwin, who says, "We can't heal what we don't reveal." So I feel we have to begin to really sit with the harm of what, and we only know about 500 years. That's even from them. The story is still from them. Even our understanding of our own oppression is still from them. So let's, really even pause there. There is no post, right? So everything we're talking about, there's no analysis. Trauma comes from war. When folks came back from World War I, World War II, people were like, yo, they're messed up, And initially, then it became post-traumatic stress disorder, right? There is no post here. There's no analysis for this. There's no clinical analysis for this. People are not meant to live in heightened states of trauma. Trauma is a natural defense mechanism, but when we have to live in it, when we talk about Black people being disproportionate for everything bad, that's trauma. Trauma destroys our bodies. It destroys our immune function. And, all the heart disease we talk about in our communities, that's trauma. That is trauma. That is the trauma of living under what Bob Marley says is a perpetuity of insecurity, always insecure. That's what oppression creates. So that's trauma. So I think we really need, and not even to talk about the mind, right? Trauma disrupts our ability to think. So when we see so many young folks in our communities that's wilding out, like, yeah, it makes sense, right? Like that's what happens. Your ability, even when we think about when we have been at our heightened states of trauma and the decisions that we've made, go back and look, be like, damn, what was I thinking? You weren't thinking. And we know that scientifically. So I feel as a community, we have shame, like mental health has been such a shameful thing for us to talk about. Having, two brothers who have struggled with mental health in the last few years, having friends who have deeply struggled with mental health in the last few years, I feel like we have to move beyond that stigma. We have to realize that, just as disease of the body is real, so is disease of the mind. And we've been living under like all the conditions to create that disease. So I feel like we have to sit with that because we're the instruments of our liberation. If we don't do the healing our instrument is damaged. Our ability to navigate this is flawed. So we have to do the healing. It doesn't mean the healing and the activism is separate, but we have to do the healing. If we're not doing the healing, then it's like, there is no freedom. There is no freedom.
If I could add, Natasha, being Black in America, living this life is traumatic. Every day, right? We experience trauma from within the womb. You know, the mother who finds out that she's having a son, especially, it starts in the womb, because you're immediately worried about your child and what will happen to your child. And what most people who are not of color, white people, don't understand how we have to prepare our kids. They just don't understand what it requires, how you speak to your children, how you have to prepare them to go outside, how they have to speak, the clothing that they have to wear, all of the things that we have to do with our children, because now it's not just boys. At a time, we only focused on the boys. Now we have to focus on boys and girls, right? And it don't even matter if our children don't identify with either one, we have to prepare them as well, because none of their lives, as long as they're Black, brown, or indigenous, are protected in this here United States of America. And that's something that has to be real and discussed. Healing is a process, and it requires work. It requires so much work. As much as I show up and I really go hard for what I do, I love the Brownsville community. I'm a Brooklyn girl at heart, but I see what's been done to that community specifically, because how it looked was like how Crown Heights looked when I was growing up, but that was back in the 70s and 80s. And it's still that same way, right, in 2020. And so taking on so much, the trauma of a school system that is not intended for their well-being, right? Does not provide the access or the funding that is needed for this community of children to ensure that we get the best teachers, not the ones who just couldn't find a job somewhere else, the ones who really want to be with our kids and have an understanding of the community, right? So as a leader, I have to deal with the Karens who might show up in the space, who come in as, you know, I couldn't find nobody else who was fearless enough to walk into Brownsville. Here you come, you say all the good things, and now you're in my classroom and you're saying some of that, you using all your microaggressions in the classroom, and you're saying things to children like, I remember I was in a class with a teacher, and they were learning about buildings, and they were supposed to recreate 3D structures. And the teacher said to the class, you know, so there's a lot of buildings that are downtown Brooklyn that are now being erected that look exactly like these buildings here. Not that you'll ever be able to live in one. I was like, what you say? I had to stop the whole class. I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, scholars, hold on. And the teacher I said, let me explain something to you. So those buildings that are erected downtown Brooklyn, I have a cousin who lives in one of those buildings, and she's just as Black as they come. What we're going to teach you in that entrepreneurship class is how you create your own. We're going to teach you about the type of professions that you can make a lot of money, and you're going to start investing and saving now, so that this way, when you come out on the, you know, when you graduate, go to college or have a career, you can afford and say wherever you want to live. Because what you're not going to do is sit here and tell this child that they're not going to live there, right? If I wasn't in that class, that's traumatic, because that's a message that's already being sent to that child, right? And so constantly having to shield these children every single day from those people who show up, from the curriculum that doesn't reflect them, the assessments that want to give them the numbers that says that they're not good enough. But these assessments that they're being given are not taken by white children who go to private schools or go to affluent schools in the city who are like, yeah, we're not doing assessments, right? Our kids aren't taking the assessments. And having to deal with all the nuances of the community. Because unfortunately, I love my people, but they come with ignorance because they don't know. They've been disenfranchised so long. So me trying to convince them that I'm here for their good, me trying to convince them, because they'll love you. They'll love how smart you are. They'll love the titles. They love that you dress fly. But there's a part of them that feels like they're not good enough. So you become a very threat. You're the very thing they want their children to be, but you're a threat to them because they're not the thing that you are to them, right? So I internalized so much in my position, it ultimately caused me to develop health issues. So for this entire year, I have not been physically in the school because I had to go on a medical leave because I developed an autoimmune disease that impacted my kidneys, right? So they couldn't even diagnose me because what I got, they're like, Black people don't get this. Black people don't get this. It's only white people or Asian people. How did you get this? But what was crazy was, and I trust that God has to put you through things so that you can see the thing, right? Because then now I had to go into the healthcare field and deal with being Black in healthcare. Not going to the annual checkup with the doctor, not going for routine, whatever. This was like, now you have to treat me in Brooklyn. So I got to see firsthand how you can be dismissive, how I got to fight for my own health. I'm telling you something's wrong and you're telling me it's not that. They told me I had kidney stones every single time I went to the ER. And I was like, I don't have kidney stones. I would have felt the kidney stone. What are you talking about? They did a biopsy on me and still told me I was okay. Until I said to the doctor, I don't listen. What we're not going to do is sit here and play me. Tell them to do something else with those cells. Eventually they found out, oh, you have IgA nephropathy. But the reason why we didn't know that is because your labs are perfect. You don't have high blood pressure. You don't have diabetes. You don't have cholesterol. You don't have heart disease. We don't understand how you got this, right? And so I was traumatized the whole entire time of being with those doctors who didn't give me a healthcare regimen, didn't teach me about nutrition. I had to learn that on my own, right? Because kidney disease, you got to measure your potassium. You just can't eat everything. When you're on steroids, they don't tell you the steroids are going to make you feel crazy. They're going to make you gain weight. They're going to make you feel like you can't even control yourself. I had the moon face, like all of these things. And I think about how many of our kids take steroids for asthma, for some type of kidney disease. How many of them on 5 milligrams? I was on 60 milligrams. On 5 milligrams feel loopy. They go into the classroom, the teacher is saying that the child is not paying attention. They act like they don't care without understanding the medical history of that child, the medication that child is on, right? So all of these things that we experience on a day-to-day basis, still having to learn, still having to try to be successful, all of those things, we have so much against us. So when they talked about we were the leading people with COVID, Black and Latinos, I was like, and the underlying issues, I said the underlying issue is me being Black in America. Point blank, period. So the idea of whether or not we are free of what exactly? Right? Because there's so much that we are still in bondage towards. We are in bondage towards the education that's provided unless there's a leader who challenges the very education that's in the classroom, right? In my school, I make sure I give my teachers the space to educate children on the things that's not going to be on the test because I'm not driven by the profits. I'm driven by the people, period. So no, they need to understand what Juneteenth really means and why we celebrate Juneteenth. They need to understand the 13th Amendment and how that traps us. They need to understand Tulsa, Oklahoma, how that used to exist, but because somebody felt threatened, right? They burned down the place. They need to understand why Emmett Till was the original Karen situation, right? Like, and how many more came before him, because they need to know that's what Tulsa, Oklahoma was. The same thing. But when we don't teach our kids who they are, what they come from, their lineage. If we teach our children, I remember teaching the kids about the Haitian Revolution, and I made sure that the Haitian teachers in my school created the curriculum to teach them. Because I was like, there's some stuff that I don't know. And I'm not going to try to make up nothing either. I want y'all to dig deep. They looked at me and said, Ms. Lopez, you want us to do it? I said, absolutely. I want you to tell your story from the perspective of how you've never been taught and you've never seen in schools. Because I remember growing up as a kid, nobody was proud to be Haitian. And that's the problem. We got too many Haitian children in here. I want them to be proud of who they are. When it came to my kids of African descent, straight up African, no, I want y'all to be in here, Afro beating it up. I want you to know that you are kings and queens. There's no laughing, joking. We're not doing that. Because in the United States, we're torn down every single day. And to be quite honest, those who are from Haiti were more rebellious. Those who are from Haiti are actually the example of what it is to stand strong and say no more. And it's our own people who tear them down. So that's not what we're going to do here. You understand? So the trauma that we deal with, it has to come with healing. The healing has to require us to sit down and actually confront the very thing that has been destroying us. The narrative that they keep perpetuating that says that we're not good enough, right? We have to do that. And I'm proud to say that I know that in my school we do it. I know that there are plenty of schools that is done. Like, remember, you all were part of, Tasha, you part of Hair Fest. Mm-hmm. Before the Crown Act, I was like, no, we're going to celebrate these kids and their natural hair. We're going to have people come in. We're going to have workshops. Because I didn't need a Crown Act to tell me I needed to teach these children about who they are and that they should rock their hair whatever way. You want to wear a weave? That's fine, sweetheart. But I just want you to understand where your hair is actually power. I need you to understand where that pick, young men, where that actually comes from. Who created that? I need you to understand that you are so dope that they have stolen everything from you from cultural appropriation. That's what we need to do. Mm-hmm. That's how healing comes, because when we start to feel our own power, we can show up a little differently. We can name the thing that's oppressing us. We can say, hey, wait, hold on. Don't come for me like that. We can unite as the Wakanda nation, right? We didn't need Wakanda to tell us. We didn't need Wakanda to tell us that we were scientists. We didn't need that, but it affirmed us, right? $1 billion that it was given to Hollywood. How much of that money came back into our communities to provide us with mental health services? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How much of was able to come back into our communities and say, we're going to create programs for young people to understand and start becoming producers? How much of that? So we have to collectively, as a community, one, not be afraid of mental health services, because therapy is good. White people do it all the time without a ease of saying that they go to a therapist. But we got to find the people who look like us, because there's nothing going to a therapist and having to explain myself, all that I've been through, because then that's for them. And I'm like, nah, that ain't gonna be it. Finding a good Black therapist, and there are some good white people in life, but you have to find someone who can relate to who you are so that you can start to unpack. Because this whole healthcare stuff that I went through and all that I went through at my hall, I literally had to find a therapist that I started to sit down with. She had been a former educator, so she understood what I was going through. She was a mother, so she understood what I was going through. She had been divorced. She understood what I was going through. And so I could go in there with my full self. And there was things that I didn't even realize I was traumatized over. So many things. And so now I'm in a better space of being open, of being able to share my story, and being able to say to somebody else, I see you. I see you. That's what we need to do.
That's beautiful, Nadia. I think that is the perfect way that we're going to wrap this up. It's when you understand yourself, you're able to understand people, right? When you love yourself, you're able to love people. Mm-hmm. And conversely, when you criticize yourself, when you are hard on yourself, when you don't love yourself, it's hard to love other people. Mm-hmm. And so that inner work is so necessary, so necessary. So thank you for that. We have a few minutes and we have a special guest who's going to come on after, so I don't want to keep her waiting too long. But I know that, well, first of all, this is one of many, many conversations. I am here on the journey to freedom with all of you who are watching. This is a continual conversation that we're going to have. But I want to wrap it up with kind of taking a 10,000 foot view and kind of seeing like your vision, because I think we have to be able to imagine something. Like Jay said, there's no clinical, there's no analysis, there's no there's no blueprint, right? So we are learning as we go. We have a lot of history to build on, and we have amazing people like like you who have done the work, but I want us to think about where can we go from here? Like, what would be the best scenario of freedom in all of your work? So Diane, I haven't heard from you in a while. So let me start with you, Diane. Unmute your mic and just tell us, what does freedom look like in the space that you're in?
Wow. Well, again, healing comes from, our mental health. I'm in therapy right now too. We've all been traumatized. And so self-care is the first thing. One of the things that I wanted to do with, especially when someone comes into my space, is to make them feel confident and make them feel good so that when they go out in the world, they have a little bit more of themselves to work with. My job is real small, and it might not seem like a lot, but it is a hell of a lot when you touching another person and making them feel like they're worthy, and to open themselves up to be seen. Because a lot of times when they wear the weave, when they wear the extensions, they're really hiding. They're really hiding from society's norms of what is beautiful, from their mother's norms of what is beautiful, their father, their husband, and so forth. My thing is this: we are keepers of a culture. We are a people that have a beautiful, vast, magnificent culture. Whether we are from Africa, from South America, from Canada, it's all one. We all have it as people of color, Black people. So my job as a hairstylist and as an activist around natural hair is to just reinforce that and to give that and to lend itself to reassure people that self-care is where it starts. Healing starts with you. You can look all outside. You can look all into a magazine. You can buy all the lip gloss. You can buy all the makeup, but the healing starts within. And you and I did a 21-day meditation. And ever since that 21-day meditation, I have learned to give myself love. Just 10 minutes a day. If you can give yourself love 10 minutes a day, that might be all that you need to go out in the world and to nurture yourself so that you can protect yourself from whatever atrocities that are out there, and there's plenty. But I feel like just that 10 minutes, I've been talking to my clients about meditation. It's not spooky. It's not, the universe taking over, but it is you understanding your little space in your little worlds. And so that's one of the things that I'm working on. And with, Emerge, we're going to be doing an event where we're going to be talking about meditation and healing and self-care. It starts with you. It starts within you.
Okay, let me just interject. Diane, your job is not small. Your job is not small.
I don't mean small in a size. I mean small because it's little steps.
Okay.
I want people to take smaller steps and not look for the big picture. But self-care comes a day at a time. Mm-hmm. It doesn't come through these big, gigantic moves. And we're protesting and we're making some big, gigantic moves, and I love every minute of it, but it creates anxiety, it creates doubt, it creates fear. In the daytime when you have the light on, everything looks great, but the minute you shut those lights down and it gets dark, that fear might creep in. So that's where the self-care and the self-meditation and the self-healing, we have to start there. We can't keep looking out, thinking someone's going to rescue us. No, you have to heal from within. And then with those small steps of meditation and healing, then we can go out into the light, and then we can become the warriors that we're supposed to be.
I love that, warriors. Yes. Jay, how about you? What is your best idea of what freedom will look like?
Well, everything that Diane just said, I feel that I work under the umbrella of evolve, and in the words evolve is love, right? And I think about how important love is in this moment, and I think about the ancestors. To your point, Diane, I think about Audre Lorde, who says self-care is an act of political resistance. It's not self-indulgence. It's an act of political resistance. And I think about that right now, being like just the truth of that in every way, right? So
Yes.
that's one piece that I agree with you wholeheartedly. I feel like we have to find love in this moment. We have to find healing in this moment. And that has to start with ourselves, right? We can't give something that we ourselves don't have. So I feel that implicitly. The next thing for me, I feel I could add to this is we have to build like liberatory communities, communities like this where we can show up in space, where we can challenge each other, where we can learn from each other, where we can empower each other towards praxis, informed action. If our actions aren't informed by like what works right now, then like all is lost. This can't be just like anger. This can't be us just being like, yo, I'm gonna show up. I don't really got a plan. I mean, sometimes we gotta show up, you know, but I feel like we gotta really have a plan. We gotta really make sure that we're in community. We have to really make sure, even this idea of freedom, right? We really have to make sure that we're challenging imaginations, which have often been oppressed. So many people, it's what it is. That is the greatest form of oppression, right? Einstein says imagination is more powerful than knowledge. And this is a moment that we really have to honor that. We have to realize that this is a byproduct of somebody's imagination or lack thereof. And if we're going to create something different, it's going to really require us to, you know, like, I mean, and it shouldn't be radical, right? The idea of every human being having the ability to self-actualize should not be a radical concept, right? That should be a basic concept. But because in a world where white supremacy has permeated the personal, it has to now be a radical concept.
Amen, amen. Nadia, what would freedom look like to you in education, like in the space that you're in? What is the, how do you know, how will you know that you finally, we're at the place where you've been working towards? What does that look like?
Freedom in the education space looks like joy and liberation. Children enjoying and loving learning and gaining pride from what they're learning, which is truth. The liberation to challenge what is happening today, what is happening in the classrooms, whether someone is coming in that's racist or not, that child being able to speak their truth is freedom. Freedom looks like giving the people who do the work the opportunity to do the work. You know, oftentimes, depending on the space, we are serving the master of assessments, we are serving the master of discipline, and we are serving the master of evaluations. And none of them are people who are of color who care about our children. So, you know, when you step into a school, there's this feeling that you walk in. There's love. There's an undeniable understanding of there's pride. There's a culture that stands out. And it requires courage. You know, freedom doesn't come without people having to be audacious and courageous and brave to challenge. So, you know, that's what it looks like for me.
Thank you. And Lurie, don't forget your mic. What does freedom look like to you? Like, what is the best possible case scenario that you could even think of for our people?
Basking in all the words that were just said by all the rest of you guys. I think for me, freedom is the ability to create systems that propel us towards freedom collectively faster than we can get there as individuals. When I was in law school, there was one of my Jewish friends was like, dude, Lurie, I'm all for diversity and like all of that. But like I learned in Hebrew school, I can't help you if I can't first help myself. And I was like, Hebrew school, let's talk about this. What is this thing? And, you know, I then began learning about our Jewish brothers and sisters who, you know, in the 1800s, I believe her name is Rebecca Gratz. She's a Jewish woman who recognized that at that time, there were a lot of Jewish immigrant children coming into the United States of America who were feeling the trauma of being non-Christian in a Christian society, who didn't know the intricacy of their rituals, didn't know how to speak in the Hebrew language, didn't know how to read the Torah, all of these things that as a good Jewish person, you kind of needed to do. And so she and others with her, and Hebrew schools now, I remember my husband and I were looking for a place to get married, and we was hella black. We was like blackity black. So we was gonna get married in the Gullah Geechee areas, or we was gonna get married like somewhere down south. We was like, we're going to, to our ancestors, where our roots are. And we ended up getting married in Jamaica where my mother's roots are, but whatever. The point was, we're traveling through Savannah, Georgia, and we are in like Black Savannah. Like it's clearly Black Savannah. Like this was not an integrated neighborhood. It was Black Savannah, Georgia. And it looked like your typical Black American urban or rural community. And all of a sudden, your typical economically disempowered Black or urban community. All of a sudden, as we're driving down the street, we look and we were stunned because it was like an instant, you blinked and there was a lawn. And it was beautiful, lush green grass. We were like, what is this in the middle? We just drove through the hood. What is this? And you look back in the distance and you realize there was this gigantic building and it had Hebrew letters on it. And it was an affirmation for me that the Jewish community has said, we are a people who are nomadic because everywhere we go, we get hate. So what we're gonna do is create our own institutions that are funded and economically sustained by us. And as a result, we're gonna create a circle or a cycle whereby we control our economy, we control our language, we control our education, so that whether we're getting hate or not, we're gonna be sustained. We're gonna be all right. We might be 2% of us in this country, but we're gonna own Hollywood. It might be 2%. And so I don't wanna give into stereotypes, but there's a commitment and the institutionalization of identity. Every Jewish person I know goes to some form of Hebrew school. They don't trust the education system to tell them who they are. They say, we are the authors of our own story, and we are going to create institutions that require our children to go from K through 18, from K through 12. You are going to not just learn our language, you're going to learn our history, our challenges, the triumphs that we have achieved. You're going to learn everything that we need you to know in order to be a good Jew. That way, when you graduate from whatever college or school you're at, you're not just going to be a good banker. You're going to be a good banker who knows how to create good loan products for good Jewish people that work in confines with our culture. You're not just going to be a good architect. You're going to be an architect who understands how to create buildings like the ones in Williamsburg that are specifically designed to house the type of family structure that is most considered appropriate for them. And you can do that on Wall Street. You can do that going back to Israel. You can do that by setting up a shop in the hood and cleaning up all the money there. But you are going to be empowered because we are going to download for you what a proper, healthy identity is, because we want you to produce good quality Jewish values. We want you to be a part of building up the sanctity of our future. And for me, systems like that are what we need to be thinking about for us. So I don't need us all to go back to Africa, although trust, I'm trying, right? I don't need us all to speak one language, although trust, I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I need us that no matter where we are at, to have the ability to create the infrastructure and the systems to not just create one good Black bank, but to replicate that Black bank all across the country so that we're not just relying on the one. Not just one good Black neighborhood, but to create blueprints so that other Black people who like, hey, I like what they did in Tulsa. Let's see how we do that. And then create a safety system, a security system, so you can't bomb us from the air anymore. But to be able to not just have a good idea, but to be pyramid builders. Such that we can systematize the replication and the mass duplication of our successes, catch our failures as they occur, and create methods of no longer failing in those ways, and doing so in a way that prizes and centers the advancement of the collective over the needs of the individual. And I think if we're able to do that, it don't matter where we're at. We're gonna be free, but we would be free on our own terms, and we would be free in our own way, and in a way that has our own identity centered, so that you cannot like black skin. We don't need you because we are the architects of everything that you desire. Like, you don't have to value who I am because I have had downloaded for me a way of seeing myself in the world and seeing how you fit in the world according to a perspective that centers me, my identity, and my people. And you know, I feel like in some ways that's what all of us are kind of working towards. But I think if we are able to master that, and I know we can, because yeah, we have slavery in our DNA, but we also have architectural capacity to build the pyramids, which are still standing to this day, that cannot be replicated by any other culture. We created math and science when white people were in caves. Like, we can do this. We just have to remind ourselves that we can.
We have to know that we can. We have to believe that we can.
Exactly.
Wow.
That is awesome. No, oh girl.
Everything.
Systems. Woo!
I feel like that, like each panelist here, each guest here has given us an idea, right? A roadmap to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And it seems like we have a charge. You have laid out a charge for us. So we have an idea of what is needed. Now we have to do that work. We're gonna have to do that work together. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. And creating the narrative is exactly what Main Moves Media is doing. We're going to be hosting more of these conversations with more people in the community. And I just want to thank everyone here again so much for all of the information, the knowledge, and the love. I felt the love tonight that you shared. Thank you again. I'm going to stay on. You guys can hop off, and I'm going to bring our next guest, Miss Deborah Hairbay, on after we watch this video. All right, everybody, see you. Bye. Okay. Sorry, guys, 1 second. All right.
People from including us under that umbrella of beautiful. Your individual braids, your box braids, your cornrows, your corn braids, Senegalese twist. Although we're saying braids, there are many things that fall under the braid category. Multimedia pieces where you had a combination of cornrows and plaits and some of the bigger braids. When I am doing any sort of style, it is with the understanding that I'm doing this look for my client to be beautiful, because braids are beautiful. To have an attachment to something that you find beautiful, that you're very proud of, and on a consistent basis have someone denigrate you or speak about something that you feel so proud of in such a negative manner. Imagine what that does to your psyche. Imagine what that does to the way that you see yourself. If I am bold enough to walk into a company, being fully aware of who I am, with a style that completely represents me, people find that very offensive. They find it offensive because we're strong enough to say, I don't want to look like you, and I'm comfortable being who I am.
Hello, I am waiting for, So that was a little preview of our guest who was on, but needs a little bit more time to call in. But that is Miss Deborah Hairbay, and the video that you saw was of an event that she had called International I Love Braids Day. And it's held in Brooklyn, New York, usually in Bed-Stuy, where Deborah was born, and actually, yeah, born and raised in Bed-Stuy, yes. And so she has created this phenomenal event to celebrate the beauty of braids, which is something that in our culture is so deeply tied, right? And so I'm bringing in Deborah right now to talk about Juneteenth, the idea of freedom, and the idea behind her event and how that's all connected. All right, so Deborah, if you could unmute your mic and your camera, we will bring you in. Thank you guys for just being with us. Deborah!
Hello.
So good seeing you. We just played a little clip. Thank you. We just played a little clip from last year's International I Love Braids Day. Yeah, so tell our audience about you and what you do.
Well, I am Deborah Hairbay, and I can call myself many things, but many of you that know me know that I define myself as a braider by choice because it's that important to me. It is that much a love of mine. And so I'm a braider.
What do you love about braids? Tell me.
Everything. What do you mean? Everything. Everything. Look at me. I mean, you very rarely see me without braids, right? It is a way to look beautiful all the time. Rain, sleet, snow, doesn't matter. Looks amazing. Wake up and go hair. It is a way to attach yourself to something that is so a part of you as per your culture and heritage that it is our air to breathe. And it is something that is different than what mainstream America does. It's different than what other people do. This is something that we do, that we can call our own, that is, it's so powerful that it takes my words away.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it is just that thing that we can do that's a part of us that represents us. It's our voice. It is our, it is the equivalent to the pick in the back of the afro. This is our voice right here.
Amen. Amen. So
Yeah.
tell us, you have a special announcement for us?
I do.
What is the special announcement? Because people have been waiting. We went over time. So people are like, when is this special announcement happening? So you are here.
Right now. So the special announcement is that we are going virtual. Ta-da! And so, like everyone else in this COVID time, you're really pressed for how to move forward. What do? We can't congregate in mass crowds anymore, even though places are starting to open up. So what do people do? You try to figure it out and you go, well, everybody's Zooming, everybody's doing this whole virtual thing. Why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I do that? And so I'm very proud to say, please save the date for July 29th. It will be something that you cannot imagine. When I tell you spectacular, spectacular.
Spectacular. And as the audience saw from last year,
yeah.
I mean, tell us a little bit about the event. It's going to be a little different this year. Obviously, we're not going to be at Restoration Plaza, unfortunately.
Right.
But tell us, why did you decide to even coin the day International I Love Braids? Where did the idea come from? I don't even think Yeah, tell me about that.
So here's the thing. God is a beautiful thing because he gives me ideas full spectrum, just straight out. And because I love braids so much and it's so important to me, it wouldn't be odd for me to think, why not have a day to celebrate? That would not be an odd thought for me. That would be more of the norm for me. Braids for me is representative of who we are. And so to have a day that celebrates that in such a grand way is not just powerful for me, but powerful for those people that can participate and partake and show the skill and receive what we're giving them. It's just, why wouldn't I want to do that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it comes from my love of a craft that I have dedicated my life to.
Okay. And it's an actual day. Like, it's not something you
it's
just...
It's an actual day.
Tell us about that, because I was there for that, but they don't know.
Oh, it's so amazing. And so our borough president, so I have been working on this and just trying to figure out what to do for so long. And then the pieces just finally came through, and our borough president saw fit to not just make it an official day, but to do it through proclamation. How grand is that? How amazing is that? And it's not just I Love Braids Day. What is it, Natasha? International I Love Braids Day. Okay. And that's what you're going to see this year. That's what the exciting thing about, because we are actually reaching out all around the world. So you'll be amazed at what we come up with.
Absolutely. Because the braid styles, I mean, let me just tell you, okay. Yeah. They are so intricate.
They are.
So beautiful.
They are.
It's works of art. I mean, okay, first of all, last year, Jennifer Lord of Natural Hollywood.
Yes.
I have no words for the just the beauty and what is it, the aerodynamics that was happening?
I know, amazing. And so it's such craftsmanship and such art. And it's always been that way. It's always been that way. So it's not anything new.
But it hasn't been that way though. It hasn't been.
It has not.
Tell me about that.
It has not. And so that's what's so wonderful and spectacular about this day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited. And I hope those that are watching get excited and tell everybody, tell mom and them to come on down and tune in. And well, it's not a come on down, right? It's a tune in now.
It's a tune on in.
Tune on in.
Tune on in. And so we'll be working together to bring International I Love Braids Day to.
Wait. What? Say that again, Natasha.
Oh, I guess that's part of the announcement. We will be working together.
Oh, it doesn't get any better than that. And if you know Natasha, you know that I am in such good hands. I'm in such good hands. So thank you, Natasha, for your dedication through and through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my life. This is why I live.
I know.
This is why I live. So I'm here to offer all the things that I can offer. You know.
And you know what? I feel it.
Mm.
I feel it. And I told you that. I feel your sincerity. I feel your genuinity. And I thank you because you can't do it by yourself.
Oh, no.
You
and
can't do it by yourself. So I thank you.
Together. We need
Absolutely.
to work together. I was there for your very first.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were.
Very first.
So I'm very thankful. I hope you know that.
Of course. I do. Like from the moment we met, we have a family.
Yeah.
We have a family.
We do.
Yeah. And so I know that everyone in the natural hair industry that I've met, and we've worked together on Master Pioneer Awards, we worked together on Meet the Masters brunches, where we were trying to get the bloggers and the stylists together.
Yeah.
We had multiple conversations, and we've become more than colleagues, right? We've become sisters in this work, sisters in the work.
Absolutely.
I know how important it is for us, right? Not just the world, for us first, to understand our beauty and to understand our brilliance, right?
Right.
That is all I'm here for. Like the world, that's second to me.
Right.
I need us to know.
Right.
I need us to know. And so any opportunity that I have to uplift someone, to open their eyes to seeing who they really are. Yes. I'm front and center.
And you are. You have proven yourself through and through. You are there. You are that resource that we can count on. And we're so thankful. I want to go back to something you just said. You know, when you hear me and I'm so descriptive about all the braid styles and it's so fabulous and it's this and it's that, that's not just saying words. Those are descriptive terms so that you get it. I want people to understand that this is something that is beautiful. It is.
It is beautiful.
Not because I say so, because it is.
Because it is.
It is.
But, you know, it's so interesting because we talked about in the earlier panel about representation and about narrative, right? Yep. And we have to realize that sometimes the ideas that we get, a lot of the times, the way that we see things, we see it that way because that's how we were taught, right? Yeah. We were taught to see things in a different way. And so with natural hair and with braids, I know how much it's been marginalized and pushed to the side.
It has.
We've been discriminated against about our braids, and we've been ridiculed for our hair and been questioned, and all these things. And so I feel like when I see people like you and see people like Diane who are and there's so many others, right, who will be on the show in future episodes, doing this work, which is empowering, right? We're really empowering people to
It's extremely empowering. Absolutely. It's empowering and it's powerful.
Yes, it is. And so in the spirit of freedom, tell me about the theme for this year's International I Love Braids Day and why you chose that theme.
So the theme is Juneteenth, and Juneteenth in itself spoke volumes. And it spoke volumes because we're talking about freedom. And natural hair is our freedom. It is our mouthpiece, right? Even when we close our mouth, even when we don't say anything, this speaks volumes. And so it would only be that choice, right? And in this time, perfect.
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 Yep.
Perfect.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So
Right.
again, July 29th, that's a Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah. Yes,
July
it is.
29th is officially, it has been officially since borough president
Yes.
Adams
Yes.
signed a proclamation. So it is International I Love Braids Day, July 29th.
Yes.
And save the date. And for more information, where can they find you, Deborah?
So you can go on Instagram. It's at, and I'm going to spell it out because it is long. So International is abbreviated. So it's INTL, and then the rest is spelled out, true to form. I love braids with an S, day, BLC. Now the BLC is Braid Love Celebration because generally it's 2 days. So this year being virtual, it's 1 day. So I'll repeat it again. It's on Instagram and it is at INTL, I love braids day, BLC.
Okay, your camera just went off for some reason.
I know it did, babe. I
okay.
apologize for that.
All right, great.
Natasha, can, hold on, babe.
Yeah, yeah. So that is the handle on Instagram. So you guys, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So you can go, oh, she wants again. All right. Stand by. We're having technical difficulties. You know how it goes. Okay, there you go.
Here we go.
Yeah. So that's your Instagram handle.
That's the Instagram
I'll
handle.
posting about it and letting people know about that. But we want to make this a global conversation because it is a global
Absolutely.
Braids is a global conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And so yeah, so thank you again, Deborah, for coming on. Thank you for being a guest on the very first episode of Main Moves Live. We did it. We did it, guys. Y'all did it.
So congratulations, Natasha.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings, my dear. Love you.
And to you. Love you too.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Yeah, you could turn yours off. I'm gonna just say it goodbye.
See what? You can't cut it off.
Uh-oh. Okay, everyone. Thank you again. This has been I breathe a sigh of relief. I was a little overwhelmed with going live today, and not because I didn't want to go live, but because I had thought about this for a long time. Like, this is a long time coming, guys. Like, I said tonight that I'm celebrating my 20th year anniversary of returning to my natural hair. I'm not celebrating. It's not like I'm having a party, but I realized maybe a few days ago, I was like, wait, it's been 20 years. Oh, wow. So 20 years, the year 2020, this year that we're having, I'm doing Main Moves full time, which has always been a dream of mine. But since I returned to my natural hair, I've had this vision. I've had this vision of what is happening right now, which is hosting conversations around who we are. And the gateway, the entry point has always been natural hair. But be clear, natural hair is the foundation, right? The foundation. And so when you see me and you see the content that I produce and you see the conversations that I have, it's always about going back to who we are and loving ourselves unconditionally. Because when you love yourself unconditionally and you know what you're capable of, no one can tell you anything. No one can tell you anything different. They can try to convince you, they can try to force you, but nothing can take away from who you are once you know it and you sit in it and you stand firm in it. And that is all that I want. And that is all that I want. So thank you again for joining. It means so much to me that people were sharing the graphics that I created. Thank you so much to my team, Michaela Anderson, of Knotted Up. I could not have done this without you. I thank you for your dedication, your love. Diane C. Bailey, thank you so much. Thank you to all my panelists this evening for taking the time to celebrate Juneteenth with us. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. Thank you all to my friends and family who are on and sending me messages while I was talking. I love each and every one of you. We will be back next in 2 weeks. July 3rd will be our second episode, and we have a lot to talk about. So thanks again, and I will see you soon. Don't forget to follow us on Main Moves on Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube, where you'll be seeing the replay of this. Okay, so if your friends missed it, you could tell them to watch the replay. All right, have a great night. Happy Juneteenth. Love you always.